Hi, I'm Kate. I thought family was supposed to support you until my brother-in-law laughed in my face. But it wasn't the laughter that hit hardest. No, it was what happened next. They tried to bury me with lies, but instead, my 14.2M-VIEW video played on their wedding screen. Imagine that. Betrayal, manipulation. And now, they can't erase the truth. The real question is, who's going to be left standing when the truth hits? Hook 2. They shut me out for years, all while secretly tearing me down, my own family. But no one saw the betrayal coming, not until that viral video exposed everything. You think you know betrayal? Wait until you see how my family tried to destroy me. But now it's my turn, and I'm done playing nice. The real shock? This is only the beginning. Can they handle the truth I'm about to drop? Combine them for an impactful. Hook. Hi, I'm Kate. They tried to bury me with lies. My brother-in-law laughed at me, but they didn't expect my 14.2M-VIEW video to play at their wedding. The truth is out now, and they can't erase it. Imagine the betrayal, the manipulation. The real question, who's going to be left standing when the truth comes crashing down? Stay tuned. I've always known my place in the family. The youngest, the quiet one, the one who fades into the background while my older sister Vivian takes center stage. Vivian, the golden child. Always the perfect daughter. The one who excelled in everything. Me? I was just the girl with a camera, trying to carve out a life on my own terms. No matter how hard I tried, I could never seem to match up to her. Our family was wealthy, old money, the kind that never has to work hard for anything. Our mansion was the talk of the neighborhood. Everything about us screamed perfection. Vivian had it all. A successful career, a glowing relationship, and an effortless charm that captivated everyone she met. She was everything our parents wanted. Smart, ambitious, polished. Me? I was always in her shadow, with no real sense of purpose, no clear direction. My parents never really understood me. They didn't get why I chose to be a freelance photographer instead of pursuing something that would bring in a steady paycheck. To them, my work was a hobby, not a career. They'd smile at my photos when they saw them, but the smile never reached their eyes. It was as if they were humoring me, indulging my little dream of making it big in the world of art. I didn't mind it at first. I accepted my place. But as the years passed, the weight of being constantly overlooked started to settle in. I felt invisible in my own family. They were so caught up in Vivian's success that they barely even noticed me. I began to think that maybe I wasn't worth noticing. That's when the wedding invitation came. It wasn't so much the invitation itself that hurt, it was the reason behind it. My mom had called me to the living room one afternoon, looking uneasy. "Kate, honey," she said, her voice calm but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "Vivian's wedding is coming up, and we've decided it would be best if you didn't come." I stared at her, confused. "What? Why?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something like guilt. "You know how Vivian is. She's the center of attention, and we don't want anything to distract from that." It was like a punch to the gut. The wedding, the one family event that should have been a joyous occasion, was now a reminder of just how little I mattered. My sister, the one they had always celebrated, was getting married, and I wasn't even invited. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding. I was being told I was a distraction, something to be hidden away. And my mom, my own mother, was the one saying it. I tried to keep my composure. "I understand," I muttered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. But inside, I felt a deep, unbearable sadness. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything that had come before. The years of being ignored, of being pushed to the side while Vivian received all the praise. I left the house soon after. I didn't say goodbye, didn't offer any explanation. I just got in my car and drove, not really knowing where I was going. The sting of the rejection was still sharp, but more than that, I felt a cold, growing anger deep inside me. I had spent so many years trying to be the good daughter, the good sister, but it was never enough. I would always be in Vivian's shadow. The drive was long, but I didn't care. I needed to get away, to clear my head. I ended up at a small coffee shop, the kind of place I used to go when I wanted to think. The quiet hum of conversation around me barely registered as I sat at a corner table, staring at the half-drunk coffee in front of me. My mind was elsewhere, on the rejection, on my family, on the years of feeling invisible. It hit me then, like a bolt of lightning. I was done with it. Done with being ignored, done with being sidelined in my own life. I wasn't going to sit by quietly anymore. I wasn't going to let them define who I was. I thought about the wedding, the perfect day that I would be excluded from, and I thought about what I could do to make my mark. I couldn't change how my family saw me, but I could make the world see me. I was a photographer after all. What better way to make a statement than through my art? That's when the idea hit me. I would go to Paris. I would take a photo in front of the Eiffel Tower, a symbol of freedom, of standing tall, of reclaiming my identity. I would show the world that I was worthy of being seen. I started planning right there, in that coffee shop. I would go to Paris, make my statement, and let the world know who I really was. I was done hiding. I could feel the anger rising in me, but it wasn't just anger anymore. It was something else, something more powerful. A sense of control, of empowerment, of finally taking my life into my own hands. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt alive with purpose. This was my chance to show my family, to show Vivian, that I was more than just the invisible younger sister. I was somebody, and I was going to prove it. I drove for what felt like hours, but the road beneath me seemed to stretch on endlessly. My mind was racing, a constant swirl of anger and disbelief. I had always known my place in my family, but never had it been so clear, so painfully obvious. My mother's words were still echoing in my head. You'll be a distraction. You'll ruin the day. A distraction. I was family, but to them, I was nothing more than a nuisance. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with frustration. I didn't even realize where I was driving until I found myself in front of a small coffee shop, its warm glow inviting me in. It was the kind of place I'd go when I needed to think, when I needed space to breathe. I parked the car, my thoughts a jumbled mess, and stepped out, trying to shake off the sting of rejection. Inside, the coffee shop smelled like vanilla and freshly ground beans. I ordered a latte, then made my way to a small corner table by the window. As I sipped the warm drink, I let my thoughts settle, my gaze drifting out the window, where the world outside seemed to carry on as usual. I, however, felt like I was standing still, trapped in a moment I couldn't shake. The longer I sat there, the clearer it became. I had been invisible for too long. It wasn't just the wedding invitation, it was everything. My whole life, I had been living in the shadow of my family's expectations, trying to meet standards I was never meant to reach. Vivian was always the perfect one. Beautiful, successful, everything everyone wanted her to be. And me? I was always just the photographer, the daughter who never quite fit. I realized I had been quiet for far too long, too passive, too content to let my life pass me by while the world focused on Vivian. But today, everything had shifted. The rejection had done something to me, woken me up. I wasn't going to be that girl anymore, the one who just accepted everything handed to her, the one who stayed quiet when she should have spoken out. I pulled out my phone, my hands still shaking, but this time it wasn't from anger, it was something else, a sense of clarity, maybe. I checked my bank account, the balance much smaller than I would have liked. But then something else caught my eye. A flight deal to Paris. I had always dreamed of going. Why not now? Why not take control for once and do something for myself? Paris wasn't just a city. It was a symbol of everything I had ever wanted: freedom, art, and the courage to live life on my own terms. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't going to wait for an invitation anymore, from anyone. I was going to make my mark. The idea hit me so suddenly, it took my breath away. I would create something that would force the world to notice me. I could use my skills as a photographer to make a statement. I would take a photo, no, not just any photo, one that would go viral. The Eiffel Tower, with its towering presence, would be the perfect backdrop. The symbolism was clear. A woman standing strong in the shadow of one of the most iconic structures in the world. It would say everything I needed to say without a single word. I smiled to myself, a little too fiercely. This was it. This was my moment of rebellion. I wasn't going to be the invisible one anymore. I was going to make them all see me. And maybe, just maybe, I would finally feel seen. I finished my coffee and stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. I had a plan now, something real to focus on. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt a surge of power, of determination. I wasn't just going to be Vivian's little sister anymore. I was going to show the world who I was. The next few days passed in a blur of planning. I scoured my wardrobe for the perfect outfit, something bold, something that screamed confidence. I did research on Paris, on the best angles to capture the Eiffel Tower, on how to make this photo stand out. Every detail had to be perfect. I was no longer just taking a picture, I was making a statement. And so, I booked my flight. There was no turning back now. I was going to Paris, and this photo would change everything. When I arrived in Paris, the city was everything I had imagined and more. The air was crisp, the streets bustling with life. I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't felt in years. I made my way to the Eiffel Tower, where I set up my shot, positioning myself in front of the giant iron structure. The photo was going to speak for itself, but there was something else I wanted from it. Validation, recognition. I wanted the world to know that I was here, and I wasn't going anywhere. The shoot went perfectly. I framed myself in the lens, capturing the moment. As the camera clicked, I felt a rush of exhilaration. This was it. This was my moment of liberation. I could feel the energy building inside me, a deep sense of pride and defiance. I was taking control of my life, my story, my future. For the first time, I wasn't just existing, I was living. I posted the photo on social media, my hands trembling slightly as I hit upload. The world would see it soon enough, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But there was a part of me that was ready for whatever came next. The first notifications started coming in. Likes, comments, messages, some from friends, others from strangers. And then, of course, there was Vivian. She commented, and I could feel the tension already building between us. Her words were neutral, but I could see the discomfort beneath the surface. She and her husband Samson had always been the golden couple. Seeing me, the other sister, making a splash was uncomfortable for them. But I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going to let their discomfort hold me back. This was my moment, and I was going to take it. As the likes and comments rolled in, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. I had done it. I had finally shown the world who I was. But there was still a sense of uncertainty deep inside me. What would my family say? Would they even care? Would they ever see me the way I wanted them to? But for now, all I could do was wait. The world had seen me, and I couldn't turn back now. The morning after I posted the photo, everything started to shift. At first, it was a small trickle of likes, a few comments here and there, but then it grew, exponentially. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Every time I checked it, there were more notifications. I had never imagined that a single image could stir up so much attention. A photo of me standing confidently in front of the Eiffel Tower, a bold statement of independence, was now a viral sensation. I couldn't help but smile every time I saw the numbers climbing, the shares spreading across Facebook and Twitter. Strangers were commenting, praising my courage, and even my friends were sharing it. People who I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly reaching out to congratulate me. But while part of me basked in the glow of the attention, another part felt a tightness in my chest. This was all too sudden, too much. I felt validated by the public's admiration, but with that validation came a surge of anxiety. My family's silence was deafening. I knew what they thought. They were ashamed. Vivian and Samson hadn't reached out. Instead, I could feel the quiet disapproval hanging in the air, their reactions mixed with a touch of discomfort. I was their little sister, the one they had always ignored. I wasn't supposed to be the one getting attention. It was always meant to be Vivian. But the world was starting to notice me, and despite the unease that churned in my stomach, there was something empowering about it. I wasn't just the underachiever anymore. I was something else. I was someone. That night, the notifications continued to flood in. I could see Vivian's comment under the post. It was polite, almost too polite, but it was there. Great shot, Kate. Nice to see you doing something bold. It wasn't a compliment. It was a hollow acknowledgement, laced with just enough patronization to make me feel the weight of it. But it wasn't about her. It was about me. I opened my phone and began to scroll through the comments, trying to take it all in. Some were just encouraging words, but others felt like small victories. You go, girl! Incredible photo, keep shining. But then there was the uncomfortable realization. Vivian wasn't the only one who felt threatened by my newfound visibility. Samson had seen the post too, and his comment was more guarded. Nice shot, Kate. But don't let this go to your head. That statement stuck with me. Don't let this go to my head. What did that mean? Did he think I couldn't handle the attention? Or worse, was he implying that I didn't deserve it? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts aside. For the first time in my life, I was standing in the spotlight. And it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. The world was watching, and I wasn't going to hide from it. The reactions kept coming, and with each one, I felt a small surge of pride. But along with that pride, a seed of doubt began to grow. What was the real cost of this attention? What would happen when my family couldn't pretend I didn't exist anymore? I wasn't sure, but I was starting to realize that this was the beginning of something bigger. The days passed, and the viral post continued to gain traction. I watched as my following grew, as my work began to get noticed by people who had never cared before. It was exhilarating, but as I scrolled through my feed one night, I saw something I hadn't expected. Vivian's status update. It was a link to a charity event she was hosting, the event where she'd be the center of attention, surrounded by her perfect life, her perfect marriage, and her perfect friends. I clicked on the link, and as I read the details, it became clear she was actively ignoring me. In fact, I had been excluded from the event entirely. There was no mention of me, not even as a distant relative. It was like the photo had shaken something loose in her. Vivian had always been the golden child, and she always expected to be the one in the spotlight. But now I had taken it from her, whether she liked it or not. I felt a cold sense of satisfaction wash over me. Vivian's world was beginning to unravel, and it was all my doing. But I wasn't going to let it go. I wouldn't let her ignore me again. I had earned this moment. I had worked for this attention. It wasn't about taking the spotlight from Vivian. It was about stepping into my own, claiming my space, and finally being seen. I was done with being quiet, done with being invisible. The world might have already noticed, but my family hadn't yet. And that's where the real challenge lay. It was time to confront them. I sat alone in my apartment, my phone lying silent on the table in front of me. The noise from the world outside, the buzz of the notifications, the comments on my photo, the likes, was deafening. Yet in the quiet of my own space, there was an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The more the photo went viral, the more I realized how far apart I was from my family. Each message from strangers, each like from someone I didn't know, felt like a reminder of how cold and distant my family had become. Vivian, my older sister, had always been the golden child. It wasn't just the successful career, the perfect marriage, or the flawless appearance. It was everything about her. She was the one who could do no wrong, and I was the one who was always overlooked, always second best. It hurt more than I cared to admit. But the worst part? It still hurt, even now, despite my success. The viral photo was supposed to change something. It was supposed to give me the recognition I deserved, the chance to finally step out from the shadow of my family. But instead, it only made the divide worse. My mother would occasionally call to ask how the viral thing was going, but there was no genuine interest behind her words. She never asked about the photo itself, never asked how I felt. It was always just the surface level. And my father? He remained as distant as ever. It was like they were only tolerating my existence, never fully embracing it. As the days passed, I felt a sense of frustration growing inside me. Why did I keep trying to please them? Why did I continue to crave their approval when they had never truly cared? The realization hit me hard. No matter how many times I proved myself, they would always see me as the lesser daughter. The frustration bubbled over until I couldn't take it anymore. I had always been the good one, the quiet one, the one who kept her head down. But now, I was done. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. The family dinner was the final straw. Vivian had invited me, but I knew it wasn't a genuine invitation. It was more of an obligation, a way to make herself look good while keeping me in my place. The moment I stepped into the room, I felt it. The icy silence, the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. Vivian was there, of course, with her husband, Samson. They sat at the head of the table, practically glowing with their perfect life, and I, as usual, was left to sit on the sidelines. The conversation was dull, repetitive, with everyone speaking in that same rehearsed way. But Vivian couldn't help herself. She had to throw in her jab. "Well, I see Kate's still riding the viral photo train," she said, her voice sweet but sharp, like a snake hidden beneath silk. "It's nice that you got your 15 minutes of fame, but you should probably be careful. You don't want to peak too soon." The remark stung. I could feel the blood rush to my face. The others at the table fell silent, sensing the brewing storm. I could tell my parents were uncomfortable, but they said nothing. The usual game. They never spoke up, never defended me. Vivian was their perfect daughter, and I was just a background character in her story. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell even quieter, and all eyes turned to me. "You know, Vivian," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger, "I've been your shadow long enough. You've always had everything handed to you, and I've been left to pick up the scraps. I'm tired of being invisible." Vivian's eyes narrowed, but she didn't immediately respond. Instead, she gave a fake smile and said, "Oh, come on, don't make a big deal out of it. It's just a little joke." But I wasn't done. "It's not just a joke. It's a pattern. I've spent my whole life trying to get your approval, trying to be enough for this family. But every time I try, you make it clear that I'm just not good enough." The words were out before I could stop them, and they hung in the air like a heavy weight. Vivian opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I don't need your validation anymore. I'm not the underdog anymore. You can keep your pity and your backhanded compliments. I'm done." There was a long pause, the silence so thick I could almost taste it. My heart pounded in my chest, and I realized this was the moment, the breaking point. I turned to look at my parents, but they still said nothing. Their indifference stung more than Vivian's words ever could. I wasn't sure if it was the final blow or just another day in their long history of ignoring me, but I knew I couldn't keep doing this. The dinner ended with an uncomfortable quiet. Vivian's eyes followed me as I left, but I didn't look back. As I walked out, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't had in years. I didn't need them anymore. The next morning, I checked my phone, half expecting more comments from Vivian or Samson. Instead, I saw a message from a prominent influencer who had seen my viral photo. They wanted to collaborate on a project. My heart raced. This was it. This was my chance to finally break free from the family's shadow, to build something on my own. As I stared at the message, I felt a mix of sadness and excitement. I was stepping away from everything I had known, from the people who had always been there, but never really there for me. But I was ready. It was time to take control of my life, even if it meant doing so alone. I sat by the window, the low hum of the city outside barely reaching my ears. The apartment felt smaller than it ever had before. The reality of what I had done was starting to sink in, and with it, the bitter realization that nothing had truly changed. My viral photo had brought me attention, yes, but it had also created an insurmountable distance between me and the one thing I had always wanted, my family's approval. I thought that maybe this time, they'd see me. But the truth hit hard. No matter how much I accomplished, how much recognition I gained, they'd never truly acknowledge me. Not in the way that mattered. Vivian, with her perfect life, her perfect marriage, and her effortless success, was still the golden child. I had always lived in her shadow, but this photo, this one moment of fleeting fame, was supposed to be my escape. It was supposed to be a way out of that suffocating space. But now, I felt trapped in a different kind of prison, one of my own making. The public validation was sweet, but it wasn't enough. I had hoped that their silence would break, that they would see me for once, but instead, they only deepened the distance. I had the entire world's eyes on me, yet I was still invisible to the people who mattered most. Sitting there, scrolling through the endless sea of comments and messages, a wave of frustration washed over me. What had I expected? That they would change? That my success would make them stop pretending I didn't exist? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been chasing after their approval my whole life, and no matter what I did, it would never be enough. It wasn't just about the photo anymore. It wasn't about making my mark on the world. It was about proving something to my family, about showing them that I could make it, with or without their support. But now, even that felt hollow. I was tired. Tired of fighting for their affection. Tired of being disappointed. But then, something shifted inside me. I couldn't keep begging for something I would never get. It was time to let go. The bitter truth was, I didn't need them. I needed me. As I stared out the window, I felt the weight lift, if only slightly. I had spent so long wondering what my family thought, and now I had to wonder, why had I let their opinions define me for so long? The cycle needed to end. The decision to stop seeking their approval was the hardest one I'd ever made, but it was the only one that felt right. I wasn't just going to sit in their shadow any longer. I found myself at the coffee shop again the next morning, the one where I'd come to terms with my growing frustration. The weight of yesterday's confrontation hung heavy in the air, and though I knew it had to happen, I still felt a pit in my stomach. The more I replayed Vivian's passive-aggressive comments in my head, the angrier I became. But I wasn't angry in the way I had been before. This time, it wasn't because of what she said. It was because I had let it hurt me for so long. I opened my phone to scroll through the comments on my viral post again. This time, I was looking for something different. As I read the messages, especially one from a follower who thanked me for sharing my story and told me how my image had inspired them, I felt something shift. This wasn't just about the photo anymore. This was about something much deeper. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just trying to make a statement to my family. I was telling the world who I was, on my own terms. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't doing it for anyone else's approval. The flood of emotions that had once weighed me down, anger, frustration, sadness, began to ebb away. I wasn't just a passive character in the story anymore. I was the author of my own life. My photo had become a symbol of strength, resilience, and most importantly, self-worth. It wasn't a fluke. It was my truth, and for the first time, I felt proud of it. No one else's opinion mattered. I had built this on my own, and it was time to stop pretending that I needed anyone's validation to make it real. I was done hiding behind the shadows of my family's expectations. It was time to build something for myself. And as I sat there, sipping my coffee, a sense of empowerment surged through me. I realized that my success wasn't just for them anymore. It was for me. Vivian's jealousy was becoming harder to ignore. At first, it had been subtle, little digs here and there, but it had escalated. Whenever I saw her now, there was this coldness in her eyes, like she was trying to figure out how to knock me down. I could see it when she glanced at my phone during family gatherings, her gaze flickering over the latest comment, and each time, it felt like a dagger. She couldn't stand that I was getting attention, that I was finally visible in a way that wasn't controlled by her. But I wasn't going to let her get to me. Instead of reacting the way I used to, angry, hurt, feeling small, I decided to stay calm. It was like playing chess with someone who only knew how to attack, but I was no longer scared of her moves. I let her think what she wanted. I didn't owe her an explanation. But then, behind my back, she tried to stir the pot. I found out from a mutual friend that Vivian had been telling people that my success was nothing more than luck, that I had no real talent. She was trying to undermine everything I had worked for. But I wasn't going to let her drag me down to her level. The more she attacked, the stronger I felt. I was starting to realize that her opinion was just that, her opinion. It had no power over me anymore. So the next time she tried to tear me down, I wouldn't just stay silent. I'd stand my ground and tell her the truth. I had earned this, and I was proud of it. My career was starting to take off. The offers from brands and influencers poured in. People were starting to take me seriously, not because of who I was related to, but because of the work I was producing. My portfolio grew, and for the first time, I was meeting people who saw my value. These connections felt real. They weren't tainted by the baggage of family expectations. They were based on my talent, my vision. Then came the big break. An opportunity to work with a major brand, one that would elevate me to a new level of success. This wasn't just another step forward. It was the moment I had been waiting for. The recognition, the validation, it was all there, and it wasn't tied to anyone else but me. I felt on top of the world. I was no longer depending on my family to feel good about myself. I was doing this for me. I was succeeding for me. Vivian's jealousy reached its boiling point. At the family dinner, she confronted me, accusing me of overshadowing her life. She claimed I was ruining everything, trying to make myself the center of attention. But this time, I didn't back down. "I'm not trying to ruin your life, Vivian," I said, my voice steady, calm. "But I am done being the invisible sister. I've spent too many years in your shadow, and I'm not going to apologize for finally standing up for myself." The words hung in the air between us. Vivian tried to guilt-trip me, but I was done. "I don't need your approval, and I'm not going to beg for it anymore," I told her, walking away from the conversation. For the first time in my life, I was proud of who I was. I wasn't going to let her, or anyone, make me feel less than. The text from Vivian came hours later. "I'm sorry for everything," it read. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at the message, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. The old part of me, the part that longed for her love, wanted to respond. But then I realized something. I didn't need her apology. Not anymore. I had my own life now, my own path, and I was walking it with my head held high. The road ahead would be uncertain, but for the first time, I felt like I was walking it with my head held high. I stared at the text message from Vivian, the words blurring as my vision shifted between anger and indifference. "Family meeting," it said. "Let's talk and clear the air." My mind raced. I had barely heard from Vivian since our last confrontation, yet now, after everything, she wanted to meet. I was at a crossroads. There was a part of me that wanted to believe this could be an olive branch, a chance for healing, for us to finally get past the tension. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't about healing, it was about control. I had been down this road before. Every time Vivian reached out, it always felt like I was being lured into a trap. A trap where I'd be the one to apologize, to fall back into my role as the invisible, unimportant sister. And every time, it crushed me a little more. I couldn't do that again. I had to stand up for myself, and I knew that going to this meeting might be the final test. Either it was going to be the beginning of something real, or it would confirm that nothing in this family would ever change. And if it didn't change, then I had to be prepared to walk away for good. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I was certainly tired of the fight. The constant pushback from my family, especially Vivian, had drained me. My success, my independence, had become a battleground, and I was exhausted. But there was another part of me, the stronger part, that wasn't going to let them dictate my happiness anymore. This meeting could very well be the last time I saw them as a whole, but it was also the first time I truly felt in control of my own destiny. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had earned this success, and I wasn't going to shrink away just because they couldn't handle it. As I sat there, staring at my phone, I felt the mix of doubt and empowerment. Would I be able to handle whatever came next? Yes, I had nothing left to lose. The family meeting took place at Vivian's house, the same pristine, well-kept home that had always been a symbol of everything I'd never quite belonged to. It was beautiful, sterile, and controlled, just like Vivian. Her husband Gregory sat next to her, both of them in their usual polished, calm demeanor, as if they were the ones in control of the situation. But I wasn't afraid anymore. "Kate, we've been wanting to talk to you," Vivian started, her voice dripping with that faux sweetness she always used when she wanted to manipulate. "This success of yours, it's been hard for us to process. We've always been a close family, but lately, it's felt like you've been pulling away." I could feel the tension rise, but I refused to let it rattle me. She was trying to make me feel guilty, trying to make me believe I was the one to blame for the distance that had always existed. But I wasn't falling for it. Her words were calculated, meant to make me feel small. You've been chasing your career, Kate. Don't you think that maybe it's starting to affect us? Your success? It's been too much, too fast. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I knew what I had to say. I've always put the family first, Vivian, I said, my voice calm but firm. I've sacrificed so much for all of you. But for once, I decided to put myself first. It's not about choosing my career over family. It's about finally choosing me. I'm not sorry for that. I watched her face falter for just a second, the control slipping. I had flipped the narrative. She tried to regain it, of course. You're being selfish, she snapped, the mask slipping to reveal her jealousy. This is what you wanted all along, isn't it? To make us all feel inferior to your big success. But instead of defending myself or apologizing, I looked at her, my eyes steady, unwavering. I've never tried to make you feel inferior, Vivian, but I'm done being the invisible one. I won't shrink for you anymore. I won't apologize for my life, for my choices. She opened her mouth to retort, but I could see her struggling to find the words. The table was turned. The silence in the room felt like an eternity. Vivian's anger simmered beneath the surface, but she couldn't find the words to strike back. Gregory tried to smooth things over with a weak, "Let's just move past this, okay? We're family." But it was clear. Vivian had lost the upper hand, and it left her rattled. I saw something I hadn't noticed before, the cracks in Vivian's perfect facade. For the first time, I could see her vulnerability. She wasn't the perfect sister, the one who always had everything together. She was just as flawed as the rest of us. And the idea of losing control over me, of seeing me finally stand up for myself, shook her to the core. I didn't know it then, but in that moment, I had won. Not just the argument, but something much deeper. I had reclaimed my power. The evening wore on, and the tension in the room didn't ease. Later that night, I received a text from Vivian. "I'm sorry," it read. "I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. I was hurt. I felt threatened. Your success made me feel like I was losing you." I stared at the message for a long time, the words swirling in my mind. I couldn't believe she was trying to apologize. But I wasn't fooled. It wasn't a real apology. It was a manipulation, a last-ditch effort to regain control. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat back, taking in the weight of everything that had happened. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I wasn't begging for anyone's love. I was free. The next morning, as I went over my emails, I saw an opportunity that would change everything. A brand had reached out. They wanted to work with me. They were offering a partnership, a chance to elevate my career to heights I hadn't even imagined. It was the kind of opportunity I had dreamed of, but there was a catch. They wanted me to travel, to leave everything behind, for months. I stared at my phone screen, feeling the weight of the decision. Could I really walk away from everything I had ever known? Could I walk away from the family that had never truly accepted me? From the life I'd built around their expectations? I didn't know the answer yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't the girl who waited for permission anymore. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the message Vivian had sent. My finger hovered over the phone, and for a moment, I thought about ignoring it. But something told me that this moment, this family meeting, was the final test. If this was truly going to be a reconciliation, I needed to face it head-on. But as I thought about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a setup. It wasn't a gesture of goodwill. It was another attempt to manipulate me. Vivian wasn't asking for peace. She was demanding control. I had been through this cycle too many times before, the endless tug-of-war between trying to gain her approval and standing up for myself. Each time I bent to the family's will, it broke me a little more. But I wasn't broken anymore. The message she had sent, asking me to come home for one last conversation, stung. I knew what it meant. Vivian's way of making everything about her, of twisting the situation so that my success was seen as a betrayal, had gone too far this time. She was using my vulnerabilities against me, just like always. But this time, I wouldn't let her. Vivian's house was still as pristine as I remembered. The walls, the polished furniture, the air of perfection that suffocated everything. The house had always felt like a stage set where we were all supposed to play our parts in a perfect little family drama. Gregory sat beside Vivian, both of them in their usual posture, calm, collected, and expecting me to be the one to cave. It was the same scene, the same setup, but the difference was palpable. I was done. "Kate, we need to talk," Vivian started, her voice cool but heavy with meaning. "You've made this public success of yours, and it's becoming a problem for the family. You're overshadowing everything." It was as if she had never once considered the idea that I was entitled to exist outside of her shadow. I met her gaze head-on, feeling a shift within me. The desire to shrink, to apologize, to return to the invisible daughter was gone. "I'm not here to make you feel better about your own insecurities, Vivian," I said, my voice firm. "If you think my success is a problem, then that's something you'll have to deal with, not me." Vivian's jaw tightened. She hadn't expected this. "You're choosing your career over family," she snapped. "This is what you've always done, haven't you? You're always chasing something else, never making time for the people who matter." I laughed, though it was devoid of humor. "You've never cared about anything I've done, Vivian. You've never cared enough to see who I am beyond the walls you've built around your perfect little life." She didn't respond immediately, but I saw the sting in her eyes. The mask she wore was slipping. "Everything was fine before you started being so visible, so successful," she said, the words coming out slowly, like venom dripping from her lips. "You've made this all about you, Kate. It's selfish." "Selfish?" The word almost felt foreign coming from her. "I've been trying to make you proud all my life, and it's never been enough. I'm done trying. You want me to choose between my career and this toxic family dynamic? It's not a choice, Vivian. I'm done with the lies." The tension between us was so thick I could almost taste it. Vivian's perfect world was beginning to unravel, and for the first time, I wasn't the one to blame. Vivian's face flushed with anger, and for a moment I thought she might lash out. Instead, she straightened her posture and attempted to regain her control. "You think this is some kind of game, don't you?" she sneered. "You think you can just walk away and leave everything behind, that we'll all just follow your lead? You've been selfish from the start, Kate, always so focused on your own damn self." Her words struck deep, but they no longer had the power to wound me. "I've been nothing but invisible to you, Vivian," I said. "I've spent my whole life in your shadow, letting you dictate my worth. But not anymore. If you want to label me as selfish for finally living my life on my own terms, then so be it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Vivian couldn't find the words to tear me down anymore. All the emotional ammunition she had been stockpiling for years, everything she'd used to control me, had fallen flat. And that was when I realized it. This wasn't just a fight between me and Vivian anymore. It was the final battle for my freedom. The last time I let her, or anyone, dictate who I was. As Vivian tried to recover, I realized the full weight of what I'd just done. I had faced her down, stood my ground, and for the first time, I hadn't caved. The years of manipulation, the gaslighting, the emotional warfare, they had no power over me anymore. The confrontation had ended, but the battle was far from over. Vivian sent me a message later that night, an apology disguised as an accusation. She claimed she was sorry for everything, but she also tried to twist the story, shifting the blame back onto me. I could feel the manipulation seeping through the words, even through the screen. She wanted me to forgive her, to let her back in, but it was all part of the game she had been playing for so long. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a deep breath and put the phone down. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into the cycle. I had made my decision, and this time, I was choosing myself. The next day, the opportunity I had been waiting for came through. A major company wanted to work with me. It was the chance I had always dreamed of, a way to solidify my place in the industry. But there was a catch. They wanted me to leave everything behind for months. The offer was tempting, but the decision wasn't easy. Could I really walk away from everything I'd known? From the family that had never truly accepted me? I stared at the email, the weight of the choice hanging over me. I knew what I had to do, but I also knew that this would change everything. For the first time, I didn't need their approval, and I wasn't afraid to walk away. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Every eye was on me, and it felt like the entire family was holding their breath. I had laid the truth bare, shown the evidence, and now the final decision was in their hands. The weight of this moment hit me with full force. This wasn't just about Vivian anymore. It was about my entire life, my future, and whether or not I would ever find the place I had been searching for, within my family or beyond. Vivian sat across from me, her arms crossed tightly, eyes narrowed. She hadn't spoken much since I presented the evidence. The silence between us felt heavy, thick with the unspoken words we had avoided for so long. But I knew I was no longer afraid of her. I wasn't afraid of the rejection I had once feared. This moment was mine. It was the culmination of everything I had endured, the years of being the overlooked, the underappreciated, the invisible one. Now, it was my turn to define who I was. "Kate, we need to hear your side one last time," my father said, breaking the silence. He was the only one who hadn't yet shown his hand. I stood up, my heart pounding, but my voice was steady. "You've all heard the truth," I began. "I've given you everything. The question now is, will you accept it? Will you accept that I have lived in the shadow of Vivian's manipulations for far too long? Or will you continue to turn a blind eye, like you always have?" The room was quiet. I could see the doubt in some of their eyes, family members who had once been loyal to Vivian, their faith in her unraveling with each word. But there were still those who looked at me with suspicion, uncertainty, as if they couldn't quite bring themselves to believe the truth I was presenting. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I had nothing left to lose. Then, something unexpected happened. My aunt, someone I hadn't expected to speak up, slowly stood from her seat. "I've been watching this for years," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Vivian always had a way of making us think Kate wasn't good enough, that she didn't matter. But that's not true. Kate's been right all along. She deserves better." Her words hit me like a wave of cold water. For a second, I couldn't even process it. My aunt, who had always been so silent, had just publicly taken my side. The shock that ran through me was tempered by a sense of validation I hadn't expected. The family was divided now, the tide shifting, but the battle was far from over. Some of them still looked to Vivian with loyalty, while others seemed to hesitate, unsure of what they had believed for so long. Vivian's expression twisted with rage as she stood up, her voice rising. "You're all just going to sit there and believe her lies?" she spat. "She's the one who's been manipulating all of you. She's the one who's turning this family upside down with her selfishness. She thinks she's better than all of us." The words were biting, and I felt them sting. But it was different this time. Her words no longer held the power to break me. Vivian's eyes locked with mine. "You think you've won? You've just made everything worse. You've ruined everything I've worked for." Her desperation was palpable. And then she dropped the final bomb. "You can either choose to stay in this family or keep chasing your fleeting success," she said, her voice thick with venom. "But if you choose this life, if you choose her over us, then we're done." It was an ultimatum, one I had been waiting for. I felt my pulse quicken, but my voice remained calm. "I already made my choice, Vivian," I said quietly. "And no one in this family, including you, has the power to decide my future anymore." Her face went pale. The words had no impact on me, only on her. She had lost. The room was silent, but it wasn't the silence of uncertainty anymore. It was the silence of defeat. My heart was heavy, but in that moment, I knew something had shifted. Vivian's grip on this family, on me, had shattered. Her perfect image, the one she had so carefully built, was crumbling. But it wasn't over yet. I still had to make a decision. After the silence stretched on, my family began to deliberate. Whispers filled the room as they argued quietly among themselves. Some sided with me, others with Vivian, and still, some were uncertain. The division was clear. No one was immune to the weight of this moment. Finally, the decision was made. "We believe in the truth," my father said, his voice low but resolute. "But we also believe in peace. Kate, Vivian, you'll both have space in this family, but you need to learn how to live apart." The words stung harder than I expected. I had won the truth, but the family would never be the same. They hadn't fully chosen me, not in the way I had hoped. There would always be a chasm between us now. But I was free. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of the chains fall away. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had fought this battle for myself, and I had won. As I stood up to leave, I felt a quiet peace. The fight had been exhausting, but it had also been necessary. I had found my strength, my voice, and it didn't matter if they couldn't fully accept me. I was already on my way to something bigger. As I stepped out of the room, my aunt approached me again, her voice soft. "I know this isn't easy, Kate," she said, "but we're here for you. You've always been more than enough." For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for healing. As I walked away from the family gathering, I felt a strange peace settle in my chest. It wasn't the resolution I had imagined, but it was the one I needed. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I had already chosen myself. The family gathering was quiet, each of us sitting in our own bubble of thoughts. Despite the victory, the emotional aftermath of everything that had transpired was heavy. The ideal family dynamic I had always hoped for felt like a distant dream now, something that had been lost somewhere along the way. But more than that, I had lost myself, or at least the version of myself I had thought I knew, innocent, trusting, hopeful. The years of quiet submission had taken their toll. But now, standing at the edge of the wreckage, I knew that it was time to let go. As the room settled, my phone buzzed. A text message notification. It was from Aunt Sarah, the one family member who had never fully taken sides, but had also never truly spoken out. "I know things have been hard, and I haven't been there when you needed me the most. But I see you now, and I'm proud of you." The words hit me like a wave. It wasn't much, just a simple acknowledgement, but it felt like a lifeline. Maybe the family couldn't be what I had always imagined, but there was still space for something else. And for the first time, I felt like someone saw me, not as the little sister, the overlooked one, but as someone who mattered. A flicker of hope rose in me, but it was tempered with sadness. This moment wasn't what I had envisioned. The truth, while freeing, had come at such a heavy price. The idealistic family I had once dreamed of was gone forever. But that was the price of change. The question now was whether I could move forward, despite the cracks in the foundation of my past. And the truth was, there was no turning back. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. It was time to let go of the past. As I stood in front of the mirror later that evening, I found myself staring at the reflection of someone I barely recognized. This wasn't the same Kate who had walked into the storm months ago. She was different. Stronger, more aware of herself and the world around her. The painful memories of the past still lingered, but they no longer had the power to control me. I had taken my future back. The next chapter was waiting, and it was time to step into it. I had received an email earlier in the day from a startup company that had been following my journey. They were offering me a role that would put me front and center in the creative world I had always dreamed of. The opportunity was the fresh start I needed. It was a leap into the unknown, a chance to build something on my own terms, without the weight of my family's expectations dragging me down. There was excitement in the air, yes, but also fear. I was walking away from everything familiar, my family, my past, and stepping into a new life where no one knew me, no one held preconceived notions about who I should be. And in that uncertainty, I realized that I had never been more certain of anything in my life. Weeks went by, and as I moved through the motions of adjusting to my new role, I began to see how much of myself I had neglected for so long. I was no longer just the daughter, the sister, the person trying to fit into everyone else's mold. I was Kate, an individual with her own dreams, desires, and a voice that was finally being heard. One afternoon, as I sat in my new apartment, I reflected on the journey I'd been on. The family dynamic would never be the same, but I had made peace with that. In a way, I had to accept that my family, while still a part of me, wasn't the foundation I needed to build my happiness. I had to build that for myself. It wasn't easy. I still struggled with the temptation to reconcile, to let old wounds heal, but I knew now that I couldn't allow myself to be dragged back into the chaos, to seek validation from people who had never truly seen me for who I was. I had learned to lean on my own strength, to trust in myself. But then, just as I thought I had finally reached a place of peace, a message arrived from Vivian, a single text, simple yet filled with weight. I know things haven't been perfect, but I want to try to fix this. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment. The temptation to respond, to reopen old wounds, was there. But I had come too far. I had already walked away from the cycle of manipulation and silence. After a long pause, I deleted the message without replying. It wasn't rejection, it was protection. My peace, the life I was building, was worth far more than any hollow reconciliation. A few weeks later, I received a letter from my father. He had never been one for emotional gestures, but the letter was different. It was short, but it spoke volumes. Kate, I can see now that you've found your own way. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. The words meant more than I had anticipated. I had spent so many years trying to earn his approval, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for me. But now, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had found my own path. And whether or not my family could fully accept it, I had made peace with that. As I stood at the edge of this new chapter, the past no longer defined me. It wasn't gone, but it no longer had the power to shape my future. I wasn't the person I had been when I started this journey. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. The future stretched out before me, full of infinite possibilities. I was no longer holding on to the past, and I was no longer waiting for permission. As I closed the door behind me, I took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next, I was ready for it.